Question 16. What are transaction isolation levels in EJB? Answer. Transaction_read_uncommitted allows a method to read uncommitted data from a DB, fast but not wise. Transaction_read_committed guarantees that the data you are getting has been committed. Transaction_repeatable_read guarantees that all reads of the database will be the same during the transaction, good for read and update operations. Transaction_serializable all the transactions for resource are performed serial. Question 17. Can entity beans have no create methods? Answer. Yes. In some cases the data is inserted not using Java application, so you may only need to retrieve the information, perform its processing, but not create your own information of this kind. Question 18. What is software architecture of EJB? Answer. Session and entity EJBs consist of 4 and 5 parts respectively: a remote interface, a client interacts with it; a home interface, used for creating objects and for declaring business methods; a bean object, an object, which actually performs business logic and EJB specific operations; a deployment descriptor, an XML file containing all information required for maintaining the EJB, or a set of deployment descriptors, if you are using some container-specific features. A primary key class, is only entity bean specific. Question 19. What is EJBQL? Answer. EJBQL is a query language provided for navigation across a network of enterprise beans and dependent objects defined by means of container-managed persistence. EJBQL is introduced in the EJB 2.0 specification. The EJBQL query language defines finder methods for entity beans with container-managed persistence and is portable across containers and persistence managers. EJBQL is used for queries of two types of finder methods: finder methods that are defined in the home interface of an entity bean and which return entity objects; select methods, which are not exposed to the client, but which are used by the bean provider to select persistent values that are maintained by the persistence manager or to select entity objects that are related to the entity bean on which the query is defined. Question 20. How EJB invocation happens? Answer. Steps: retrieve home object reference from naming service via JNDI, return home object reference to the client, create me a new EJB object through home object interface, create EJB object from the EJB object, return EJB object reference to the client, invoke business method using EJB object reference, delegate request to bean, enterprise bean. Question 21. What are the callback methods in entity bean? Answer. Callback methods allows the container to notify the bean of events in its life cycle. The callback methods are defined in the javax.hb entity-bean interface. Question 22. What is message-driven bean? Answer. An MDB is essentially a message consumer that can listen to a message destination or a message endpoint and gets activated when a message arrives. By design, MDBs are anonymous in nature and hence cannot be directly invoked by a client. The only way to invoke an MDB is to send a message to the destination or endpoint to which it is listening. As MDBs are stateless in nature and are not related to any specific client, they can be pooled for concurrent processing of messages. Question 23. What are the services provided by container? Answer. Container services are totally depends upon the vendor implementation, but more or less most of the vendors supports the basic services like lifecycle management, it is automatic; session management, it is used by developer coded callback methods; transaction management, it is used by configuring deployment descriptor (DD); security management, it is used by configuring deployment descriptor (DD). The other services, if any, will be in advanced versions, and depends on vendor specific. Question 24. What is deployment descriptor? Answer. Deployment descriptor is a XML file, which is used to locate the web application by container.it, includes the details of respective bean. Question 25. How many EJB objects are created for a bean? Answer. For a session bean, 1 EJB object for 1 bean instance. For entity bean, it depends. If 2 users are accessing 1 row at time, then 1 EJB object is used for both the beans, otherwise for each bean 1 EJB object. Question 26. What is reentrant? Is session beans reentrant? Is entity beans reentrant? Answer. If we define the entity bean as being reentrant, multiple clients can connect to the entity bean and execute methods within the entity bean concurrently. Container takes care of synchronization. If we define the entity bean as non-reentrant and many clients connect to it concurrently to execute a method, exception is thrown. Question 27. What is EJB client JAR file? Answer. An EJB client JAR file is an optional JAR file that can contain all the class files that a client program needs to use the client view of the enterprise beans that are contained in the EJB JAR file. If you decide not to create a client JAR file for an EJB module, all of the client interface classes will be in the EJB JAR file. Question 28. What is EJB container? Answer. An EJB container is a runtime environment that manages one or more enterprise beans. The EJB container manages the life cycles of enterprise bean objects, coordinates distributed transactions, and implements object security. Generally, each EJB container is provided by an EJB server and contains a set of enterprise beans that run on the server. Question 29. What is remote client view? Answer. The remote client view specification is only available in EJB 2.0. The remote client view of an enterprise bean is location independent. A client running in the same JVM as a bean instance uses the same API to access the bean as a client running in a different JVM on the same or different machine. Remote interface. The remote interface specifies the remote business methods that a client can call on an enterprise bean. Remote home interface. The remote home interface specifies the methods used by remote clients for locating, creating, and removing instances of enterprise bean classes. Question 30. What is local client view? Answer. The local client view specification is only available in EJB 2.0. Unlike the remote client view, the local client view of a bean is location dependent. Local client view access to an enterprise bean requires both the local client and the enterprise bean that provides the local client view to be in the same JVM. The local client view therefore does not provide the location transparency provided by the remote client view. Local interfaces and local home interfaces provide support for lightweight access from enterprise bean that are local clients. Session and entity beans can be tightly coupled with their clients, allowing access without the overhead typically associated with remote method calls.